What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I'm your hostess, doing the mostest, Kivanshi, and it is awards seasons, y'all. Brr, 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 brr. So every Wednesday for the month of January, instead of doing a theme like I've been doing in October, November, and December, this month's theme is literally going to be covering all of the award seasons that's coming up between January and March specifically. But something that I wanted to do that was just a little bit different, instead of reviewing a single film that's nominated for it, this, that, and the third, every week we're going to be going over different categories in different award seasons. And I decided to use this as also like an educational piece, because you see a lot of discourse online where everybody's like, how is this film nominated, or how is this person nominated over this other person, this, that, and the third. And the average person doesn't really understand, nor will they care to look up eligibility requirements, all the different nuances and stuff that you need to meet in order to be able to compete within a category. They may not be aware of the timeline in which you have to submit certain things when your film is supposed to debut, or if it debuts after, let's say, nominations come out. Did you submit your stuff to be screened by the voting committee, this, that, and the third, etc., etc. So I decided, you know what? Every Wednesday for the month of January, we're going to go over the Golden Globes. We're going to go over the Critics' Choice nominees, Saturn Awards, People's Choice Awards, and the Oscars. And in that, I'm going to be reviewing and talking about films and rating them and who I think might win or should win or could win, but different categories. So today we are going to be going over the films and just my thoughts and critiques on the Golden Globe nominations for Best Motion Picture. So before we get into the films that are nominated, what qualifies for you to even be considered for Best Motion Picture? So it has to be the most widely liked. So the Academy uses a ranked choice voting system to determine the winner, and the movie that receives over 50% of the votes win. So whoever's going to win this category wins it. It's most widely liked with over 50% of the votes. What does this encompass? The story. The story must be well developed. It must have engaging characters and meaningful themes. Technical excellence is taken into consideration, so cinematography, sound design, editing, virtual effects, practical effects, things of that nature. The cast and crew. So how well did the entire production team, to including lighting, makeup, costume, the set design, how well did all of those things come through to actually add to the story instead of take away from the storyline? And then representation and inclusion. Now, I don't know that a lot of people even know about this. So to even be considered in this category, at least 2 of the creative leadership positions and department heads must be from an underrepresented group. And of that underrepresented group, at least 1 of them must be from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. So I don't want to say that when people write their films that they're thinking about this per se to be considered, but in order to be considered, you actually have to be inclusive. And a lot of people might think that this is woke, this, that, and the third, but I mean, we're looking at best overall. And if we're looking at best overall, more than likely you want your best overall like motion picture to be representative of the diaspora of human beings that's out there, and you want everybody to see it to be able to connect to that story. So whether I may not relate to a Jewish storyline because I am not Jewish, does something in the storyline connect to me while also making Jewish people feel seen and connected to the story as well? So that's one of the things that I think really is missed by a lot of online discourse from your casual movie viewers and things of that nature. So I just wanted to lay out how you actually can compete in this category before going over the scenes. So the nominees for Best Screenplay Motion Picture for Golden Globes are Jacques, Audiard, Emilia, Perez, Sean Baker's Anora, Brady, Corbet, and Mona Fastvold, The Brutalist, Jesse Eisenberg, A Real Pain, Coralie, Fargeat, I don't know how to pronounce her name, I'm so sorry, The Substance, and Peter Straughan, Conclave. So we're just gonna go through these movies. I'm gonna be looking at my notes a lot because I watched these films over the last couple of weeks, and it's just a lot. Like, all of the films are like smashed in my head right now, and all of my thoughts and things of that nature. So we're gonna go through each film, and we're just gonna talk about a lot of the different things that relate to the qualifications that you have to meet in order to win Best Overall Film. And then at the end, I will give my rating out of 10 for each film. And not just my rating, but, you know, who do I think I should win? Who do I think the Academy might actually vote for to win? And just my overall thoughts and rewatch value of all of the films in the first place. So let's start with Emilia Perez. So the log line is, Emilia Perez follows 4 remarkable women in Mexico, each pursuing their own happiness. Cartel leader Emilia enlists Rita, an unappreciated lawyer, to help fake her death so that she can finally live authentically as her true self. So one of the things that I really loved just overall about this film was how the lighting and the cinematography was so beautiful, and how it was like creatively juxtaposed against the violence of the movie, especially in the opening scenes. You have just violence all around, but then you have Rita, who's played by Zoe Saldana, just singing like beautifully and just kind of like weaving through these points where she should be afraid, but she's navigating them in a way that shows that she's not afraid, but also that she's used to it. And with the way that they use the elements of light and darkness in this movie, it was really good. Now, going into this, I did not know that it was a musical. I'm sorry, I'm still recovering from the flu, y'all. So I need to try not to laugh, because every time I laugh I cough. But I didn't know this was a musical. But with that being said, the dialogue and the way that the music kind of went with the lines was really, really smart. So a lot of musicals, I don't watch a lot of them unless I'm specifically going to a play. Even in plays, you'll get like a scene and the dialogue will fade out, and then it'll go into the song, and the song is supposed to punctuate whatever the dialogue was. But sometimes the song can seem maybe brighter than what the dialogue was, or darker than what the dialogue was, and it evokes a different emotion. And one of the things that happens in Emilia Perez is not that. So you'll get a dialogue, and let's say the dialogue is angry, and it just increases into this percussive nature that goes directly into the song, that literally is directly related to the lines that we just sang. So I found myself throughout this movie not even realizing when they were singing and when they weren't singing anymore, because it just flowed very well, and I felt like the dialogue wasn't broken up by the music. This year I recently saw Hamilton, and I know I'm like hella years late, but Hamilton is one of the few plays that I can think of where we're having this argument, we're having this thing, and dun, 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 and you just lean into it with the music, as opposed to being angry and then having this sad song kind of go through and stuff like that. So every emotion that you felt, everything that they said, the song itself became like an accent mark on the dialogue, and I really like that. One of my favorite shots in this whole thing is when they're in a bar, like a bar restaurant, one of those upscale type things, and Rita realizes who Emilia Perez is. And this is where your theater actors and everybody comes into play, your lighting person. Like, this whole thing was just like theater, but like to the nth degree. So Rita is sitting at the bar with Emilia, and there's this realization that happens, and there's all of these patrons that's in the bar. And when the realization happens, you know, when you're in a room and something just jolts you so badly, everything just kind of fades away and you get tunnel vision, and it's almost like you're having a panic attack, so your vision becomes very dark along the edges, and you're just singularly focused on this thing that has you in fight or flight mode. So they were able to do this visually, where all these people suddenly disappear and everything goes black, but the spotlight is immediately on Rita and Emilia, and there's this whole thing, and you get to feel and see them enact this panic attack of like what is actually occurring. And then when the panic finally like fades away and the light slowly comes back on, you have everybody else that was still in that room but completely frozen, boom, instantly going back into play as if nothing ever happened. And I thought that was just brilliant use of lighting, of editing, and direction. And I would venture on to say that just throughout the entire movie, the way that they kind of played with those things, it was like a dance, and it was like a marriage for the entire film. So that was Emilia Perez. Now, also, I forgot to mention, Emilia Perez the genre is pop musical and crime, and it was 2 hours and 10 minutes. Now, with all of these films, I just went in blind, but I like movies and television very differently than your average person. So I don't know, the dedication for me is much different than the average viewing party, if you will. But moving on to Sean Baker's Anora. This is a rom-com / drama, and it's 2 hours and 19 minutes. And I actually had the chance to watch this at one of the local film centers that hosts the film festivals. And the experience was very personal, and I like that Sean Baker got on before the film started and like specifically spoke to us sitting in this particular theater about this being a passion project and why it's important to him, how he shot it, and things of that nature. And it's crazy that he wrote and directed this film and the way that the film is, but how he was like on camera just speaking and like, hey guys, thank you for watching this film. He was just really shy and just really reserved. And so I saw that message before I saw the movie, and I was just like, wow, some of the wildest things come out of the most reserved people's minds. And so that made the film, in hindsight, after I finished watching it, like all the more interesting, because the director himself seems like this wouldn't be something that if you met him, you would be like, oh, you did this film, like this is under your belt. It's not something that you would assume. And it was definitely like it's definitely like a don't judge a book by its cover. Again, sorry if I'm rambling and scrambling. I'm recovering, but I do feel good. Thank you for everybody in the last video who wished me well and hoped I got better. I've been resting for 4 days, and so this is the first time I'm able to actually sit up and my body like doesn't ache. So yeah, we're here. Yeah, we're here. I'm here. I'm fine, guys. Okay. Anora is based on a young sex worker from Brooklyn. She meets and impulsively marries a son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as his parents set out to New York to get her marriage annulled. So this whole film was shot on 35mm camera. So this gives like nostalgia. It really gives like that grainy picture and that quality that you see like when TV and film first came to color. that's kind of what it reminds you of, but then like a remastering of that, so you still get the grainy version of it, but like 4K grainy footage. And that's what it really reminded me of. There were some lighting in here, like in some of the club scenes, that I think could have been better. You get a lot of use of red and blue light, and one of the things that I can only relate it to is Insecure. In the show Insecure, there's a shot where Issa and Lawrence are standing opposite each other, and one is backed by red lighting and the other one is backed by blue lighting, and it's dark outside, but you see them very clearly. In some of the club scenes, I did wish the lighting could have been better to kind of offset the vibe that we were going for in the club. There's a lot of times where we want to put darkness in the movie and it ends up being like dark, but a lot of times I think visually that's not what the viewer would expect. It's like, okay, simulate the darkness, but let us see like everything that was going on. But didn't take away from the vibes and stuff that were in the club. And once I kind of got through that, it was just like, oh, okay, I'm at the strip club. Like, it is what it is. I think I had to think back to when I've gone to strip clubs, and it looks like what your eyes would see in a strip club, but just as I'm watching the film, I think I would have wanted it to be lit. I would have wanted the characters to be lit a little bit better, not necessarily the scene, if that makes sense. I do like that the subject is about youth and sex work and drugs and money, and what that looks like when you're someone who is in that realm but you come from no money, and then you're someone who's in that realm and you come from a lot of money. And I described this in my notes as basically if Euphoria was a movie but portraying legal adults. So it definitely gave me just that recklessness of being in your young 20s and not thinking about the consequences of your actions, not thinking about the future, just thinking about self-gratification. And when we talk about the plot and the theme, and like we mentioned in just one of the things that qualifies you to be considered for Best Motion Picture, I think that the theme and the plot of this is on brand, I would say. I don't think that in television we really focus on the youth and drugs too much like that anymore. But again, I likened it to Euphoria. I think it really opens your mind at how the youth are very clever at hiding their vices until it's completely out of control. And I think the theme of this is we're hiding so many things, and we're watching these people use drugs and alcohol and all of these other things to escape until everything that you tried to escape from comes crashing down all at once, and it's definitely not in your favor. There were some funny moments in here that I laughed at, and I don't know that they were intentionally trying to be funny, but I think it's just one of those things that you just end up laughing at. It's like if a friend is recounting a story to you where while the story was happening, it was super like messed up, but now that they're safe and out of the woods, you're laughing because it's just like, oh my God, like how did you find yourself in this situation? So they had a lot of moments like that. I also thought that the way that it was shot, the way the camera was kind of like following people, it reminded me of a vlog. Like it literally gave me, a week in the life of Anora. It was a lot of just vlogging style, which vlog style can kind of feel somewhat like a documentary, somewhat of a mockumentary, but it was more like documentary style in the way that when the people are moving, we are moving. In the way some of the angles and the shots were set up just reminds me of when people are setting up shots and angles for their own vlogs to kind of capture some things. But I really felt like I was the cameraman in that I followed everything that they did, and I rather enjoyed that. It it was very interesting to feel a part of this film in that way, especially with the picture quality of it. It was almost like watching an old home video. Yeah, I would say it was like watching an old home video. One of the things that I like in this, and it's a quote from the film, and it was, I don't know, it was like one of the funniest parts of the film, and it was just saying like, don't complicate your life. When you watch the movie, you'll laugh at that part, but I thought that that line really described the movie so well, like, don't complicate your life. And in this film, we just see decisions that could have not been made. Like, you had so many options laid before you, and yet you chose the complicated decision every single time. And it's like one of those moments where, you know, when you watch a movie and then they end up saying like the name of the title in the movie, this would be one of those names of the title in the movie moments for me. Even though the title was Anora, I felt like this line was somebody talking to Anora. Don't complicate your life. Like, it literally encapsulated the whole film for me. So that was Anora. Moving on to The Brutalist. So The Brutalist is not out yet here where I live, and I missed watching it at the screening back in November at this film theater. So, film center. So I'm kind of bummed, but it's an epic drama. It's 3 hours and 35 minutes. The log line: when a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of modern United States, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious wealthy client. Did not watch the movie, so I can't speak too much on it. I did watch the trailer. From what I saw from the trailer, now this is not all encompassing because most times trailers are done before the final edits of the film are even cut, and I could tell that there's this like blue-gray look to it to kind of put you in the mindset of a more, I don't want to say dull or colorless, but just less vibrant time. I think in our mind's eye, when we think about the 1940s, 50s, or anything in the past, we dull the mental picture. And from what I saw in the trailer, it basically gives that, like blue hues, gray hues, the use of black, the shadowing and depth of field seems to kind of like draw you back in time. And from what I've seen of the imagery and the cinematography itself, it's very crisp. Some of the wide shots that they put into the trailer are quite beautiful. I love just landscaping and framing in that way. But again, I haven't seen the movie, so unfortunately this is not a film that I will be able to rate at the end of this. But I just wanted to have some integrity, and sorry I just burped, but I just wanted to have some integrity. In every week I will definitely try to watch all of these films as much as possible. I don't even think y'all even understand the lengths that I'm going to watch all of these films. Like, you have no idea, but the dedication is here. But I've heard a lot of things. I've read a lot of critic reviews, and a lot of people really like The Brutalist. A lot of times though, I'm using a lot, but a lot of times though, I know, especially with like voting parties that's not peers, I do wonder if the people who vote for the winner actually sat and watched all 3 hours and 35 minutes. I get people have a lot of things and a lot of deadlines and just their own lives, but I'd be curious to know how many people who are voting sat and watched every single one of these films like somebody like me did. Even though I didn't watch The Brutalist, it's not without trying. I've literally been searching for this movie for forever, but the first showing available out here is January 9th, and the Golden Globes air on January 6th. So unfortunately, I won't be able to watch it, but I will go see it on the 9th. And if it just so happens to win, then I'll at least watch it and know why. And I'm having like a crazy deja vu moment right now. That's crazy. But anyways, The Brutalist, if you were able to see it, let me know in the comments what you think about it. I won't be able to see it until January 9th, and I might double back on here and make a comment after the Golden Globes, especially if it wins, or even if it doesn't win. Maybe I think it should win, I don't know, but I'll double back in the comments myself to say what I thought. Moving on to A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg. This is a comedy and drama, and it's an hour and 29 minutes. So out of all of the movies in this category, this is the shortest one. And okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's the shortest one, which I would say I would have to look at history's past, because a 90-minute movie in 2024 being nominated for Best Motion Picture seems like a reclaiming of movies past. Like when I was growing up, like 90 minutes was long as hell. 120 minutes was like so new for people to even be in the movies and be like, oh my God, I sat here for 2 hours. So a lot of our favorite movies and movies that were winning things were like 90 minutes long, maybe 100 minutes long, 110 minutes. So to see in 2024 with everybody coming out with these existential movies, and they have to be so philosophical and all these other things, and give us 2 hours and give us 3 hours, to see that they even got voted in to compete for Best Motion Picture, I think is a win in and of itself for Jesse Eisenberg. Like, I'm gonna just say that off rip. So the movie is about mismatched cousins who reunite for a tour through Poland to honor their beloved grandmother, but their old tensions resurface against the backdrop of their family history. In the first 7 minutes of this film, I knew exactly what the film was about. And not in a bad way. We're in an airport. You know how airports are. It's about people are moving and stuff like that. But like, what does an airport represent? Airport represents travel. It represents like a transition from one place to another. And we see one of the main characters in there. And just in this, there's so much anxiety and doubt, and worry and all these things. And then he meets his cousin, and it's like the total opposite. And in the cousin, you kind of get like, what's happening? And so in the first 7 minutes, you understand like, oh, there's some tension here, and I don't know what it is, but sure, let's pretend. Now, I wrote that down in one of my notes because I think this speaks to Jesse Eisenberg's writing. How to give away the plot without giving away the plot. If this was a short film, just based on the first 10 minutes alone, I would be invested. I would be invested. And Jesse Eisenberg is just different. And out of all of like the writers and the directors of these films, I think on a personal level, I just connect with Jesse Eisenberg's his humor, his point of view, his direction, and how he thinks. I relate to him a lot. So maybe that's why immediately I was like, oh, I get it. But also, you don't get it. It makes you want to discover and peel back the multiple layers that's in the plot of this film. So I will also say the jokes are expertly infused, and Kieran Culkin's timeliness and delivery of the jokes and the pain and the drama. I mean, we know that he can memorize things, and we know how much of, at least these days, and for this film specifically, he was a non-preparer. but I would like to say that there's a lot of perfectionist behind him that allows for the lines to be delivered by this character in such a perfunctory way. And I don't know that I've seen a more perfect performance by Kieran. And this is coming on the heels of all of the success of Succession. Yeah. And I actually have a lot more background on this one because I've watched interviews with Kieran about this film, and to know that Jesse Eisenberg wrote it and just was like, hey, I want you to be in this movie, without ever like really knowing what Kieran can do, it speaks to the trust of Jesse, but it also speaks to the brilliance of the script. And one of the things I think Kieran said in his interview, it was on Actors on Actors with Coleman Domingo, where he said like he looked at it and like had no questions, no notes, no nothing, and he just dove in. And throughout the plot of this, you can definitely understand why there would be no questions about what's going on in this film. So the whole movie, I would say, is like a really good punchline. You know when jokes, you know when somebody like tells a joke but then they keep going and the joke goes on too long? This is like one of those jokes that every time you get a moment to settle your mind, you start laughing again. Like it's just like sustained goodness and like a really good memory throughout the entire movie. Yeah, it may be dark, it may be laced with some grief or something like that, but it's like every time you stop and think about it, you're having a good time. So one of the things with the camera work here that stands out, so some parts of this movie you're a spectator. So in the wide shots, it's like, okay, you're looking out from the outside in like a regular viewer. But then there's other parts where you feel like you're in this group with them and you're amongst the characters in the scene. And as truths are coming out and as secrets are coming out, it's like you're also sitting there uncomfortable, like, should I leave while y'all are talking about this? So I really liked how the way that they decided to bring us in and then push us out, it was like a dance almost. So sometimes I was deeply involved and I was one of the people on this tour in Poland, and then sometimes I was just watching a movie. And I don't know, because of that, I think it really kept me on edge and really trying to decipher like what was coming next and what is this tension between these two people. Like it just kept me wanting to know more. The music, okay, so music, the backdrop or overlay, if you will, of this entire movie was Chopin, and they're in Poland. And so we're using music that kind of takes us back to like traditional orchestral moments and stuff like that. So the music kept you in time with the scenery, even though the characters are from our time. So it mentally kept you engaged with where you were supposed to be as you watch this. As you watch this movie, even though your eyes are looking at something that is very current. So it was like a gentle reminder of, hey, you're in Poland, you're going down, you know, history and you're learning. And so then you have those moments where we're having this current day dialogue and stuff like that, and then you have these things where we're moving from scene to scene to scene, and it's like, here's a reminder of where you need to be and how you need to feel. And I thought that that was a really good way to keep the audience focused on the theme when we should be focused on the theme. And then when we weren't supposed to be focused on the theme, I think they did a really good job at focusing us on the tension between the two cousins. Now, I had to look at the camera for this one. a lot of times when I see footage that looks not 2024, I like to look up the camera and the lens and stuff like that. Like I said, Anora was shot on 35mm camera. You could just really tell that it was a very specific view on how they wanted to do it, and it's the same thing with this film. So the camera was the Alexa Mini LF, and for the lens they use a Leighton M0.8. So what they said for the camera is, on the end of the movie, so in final editing, we added more warmth in order to give an even more nostalgic look, fitting the return of our main protagonist to their hometown. So whereas some historical films, like I just described in The Brutalist, may go like the blue light, the grayish hue, they decided to overlay it with a warmth that I thought also just married together with the use of Chopin for the musical composition. Chopin and the songs that they chose were very warm, were very colorful. It felt like a hug, and it felt like a really good memory in front of a fireplace. So it wouldn't have worked if it looked like the grayish bluish hues like you would sometimes see in old school war films that are filmed in the 21st century. So I like that it was more colorful. I won't say sepia toned fully, but just, it was a smart choice, in my opinion, to go that route, because it just layered so well with the story and with the music, and even with the type of camera lens that they used. I just felt like it was a really good memory. With that, we're moving on to something very dark. The Substance. Body horror. Dark comedy. 2 hours, 24 minutes. Now, I love horror. Y'all know I love horror. I'm really excited. Again, just like A Real Pain, I'm excited that a horror movie is nominated as Best Motion Picture, because there's a lot of like genre bias against horror. Specifically, there's genre bias against superhero movies. Like, if it isn't like sci-fi AI intelligence, it's almost like it's not worthy enough to compete with other dramatic pieces, even though the heart of horror and the heart of comics is drama. It's the heart of it. So super excited about their nomination in this. So the movie is about a fading celebrity who takes a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. Okay, out of the gate. Okay, so I'll just give a little backstory of my growth in the things that I pay attention to in film, so you understand why I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say about The Substance opening. When I Am Legend came out, I was still in high school, and one of the things to this day that stands out to me is how quiet the movie was. It was so fascinating to me at that time. I think it was the first movie of its time that was like a horror thriller that didn't have its scary moments highlighted by any musical score or composition. He was living, and then some scary stuff happened, or something that would shock you would happen. And I think for the first time, I was immersed in a film that felt like if I were in the world alone, I too would only hear the leaves rustling, a deer in the woods, birds chirping ahead. And if I were to traverse the planet alone, I would have so much anxiety as I'm peering around a corner because I don't know what's going to come and get me. If it's going to be a bear that I can like shoot down for dinner, or if it's going to be this zombie that's going to come and kill me. And from there, my interest in sound designing just blew through. And I started paying attention more to sound designers being able to create the absence of sound. Like, obviously there is no sound. There's sound in everything that we do. Even if you sit in silence, there is sound. And so the ability for sound designers to create silence and what they're able to do, even when they put in different sounds in movies and in television, I just never realized how creative they could be in this space outside of the da-da, 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 like, okay, we know the shark is coming in Jaws, or my favorite, like, we know Michael Myers is on the way. And this isn't to take away from any of those things and the breathing and all that other stuff, but that was the first time it was just silence. So I turned on the substance, and then I heard nothing for like 30 seconds. And I think I was in my phone getting ready to take notes. So I got my notes app open, and I hear nothing. And I look up, and I'm like, did I press play? And then this image comes on, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, it was just the fact that nothing was happening. It makes you, like, as the viewer, be like, what is going on? Instantly just curls you right on into the movie. And I thought that that was astounding. Out of a lot of horror movies and stuff that I've seen these days, I think that's the most creative way to get your viewer to, I don't know, get out their phone and actually pay attention. Going through the opening sequence, I really wanted to know who Elizabeth Sparkle was. Like, who is this person? So you have this moment in the movie where it opens up and there's like nothing going on. And then we're getting into things, and it's like all this praise, and there's this star, and there's this spotlight, and there's all these things. And so it really makes you want to know, like, okay, who is this? Who is this person? Like, where is she? Like, what is she doing now? And I will say that the way that they shot this, it was an overhead shot. So you're like looking down on this sequence of events, and it reminded me of like when we do deep dives of our favorite entertainer, and that could be acting, music, or whatever, on YouTube. Think about when you're holding your phone, you're looking down almost all the time, and you're looking at like you're looking at highlights of their life and stuff like that, and or you see a video on Twitter and you watch it and you're like, oh, I wonder, let me watch some more. Like, what else did they do? The way that they shot that reminded me of my own thoughts of when I'm looking at videos of people that I like. Like, oh, what else did they do? Oh, what are they doing now? Oh my God. Okay, what's their next project? Oh, what did they do in the past? Like, I don't know. In these first few minutes, I just felt very enthralled by how the use of camera work made me see what we as consumers do on a daily basis, especially now in this day and age. So the cinematography and the color grading is insane. The way that this is colored, and the way that the colors and the oranges and the pinks and the blues and the greens, the way that it pops is absolutely incredible. And then the use of wide shots and close-ups literally make you feel like you have on like a VR headset. like the wide wouldn't just be like a normal wide with squared edges. It would kind of almost curve around like a panoramic shot. And it's crazy because one of the most iconic scenes in there is with Dennis Quaid, and you're sitting at the perspective of Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore. You're in a close-up of him, but it's still wide panoramic to where you the character, are aware of your surroundings while also being very acutely aware of what is actually happening with this person and every minute thing that he's doing. I don't know whose idea this was. Maybe it was Coralie's, but absolutely incredible. It felt like I was on a virtual reality experience the entire film, and then you just take the headset off and you're just like, okay, that was a thing that happened to me. Yeah, so I don't know what they call it. I don't know that I've ever seen a movie quite like it, and especially like I feel like maybe in The Shining it was done a little bit, like a little bit, but in this film it was done the entire time, so it truly felt like stepping into the Twilight Zone almost. So one of the things that I wrote in my notes is that this is Black Mirror on steroids. And so I wrote that because of the theme and the plot. If you've ever seen Black Mirror, anthology series, it's absolutely amazing. It's about taking social, what's the word? I don't want to say norms. Sometimes the Black Mirror episodes are about taking parasocial relationships or 21st century societal norms and exaggerating them to the point where it's like, what is the worst possible thing that can happen if we indulge this thing way too much? And in this film, it's about how we, the audience, view perfection and beauty, not only on celebrities, but specifically women celebrities. And what happens when we do too much, or we have such a lack of concern for them as human beings that we just blurt whatever we want out on the internet, on Twitter, to anybody that'll listen to us because we have access to everything, and how that affects the human being behind the celebrity, and how if they are not sound, how they can take everything that we as society say and it warps into something that is extremely unhealthy. So one of the things that I love is that Coralie took this idea, and I'm going to use Twitter as an example because Twitter has been great for me this year. It's the most I've been active, but Twitter is also like a cesspool of people who just throw their thoughts out into the universe, and then when a celebrity responds to them because they have hurt their feelings, those same people who said something really nasty and really awful will then say, oh, where you shouldn't even be paying attention to me, you're too rich, I'm nothing in this. But the thing is, it's like you treat them like they are not humans. And Coralie really took this and said, here y'all go, here's a product of your nastiness, of your mean spirit to the celebrities, and here's the worst that could happen. And I really love that. Like, shout out to you, Coralie. I love it a lot. So, whoo, okay. The sound designer. Again, sound designer does a great job at enhancing the anonymity and the trepidation of it all. It was really, I would say, I can't think. The flu still has my mind. What am I thinking about? There wasn't a pattern to when the sound designer decided to just kill their role. Like, there was no pattern. There was nothing that you could discern that would happen. It would be happening, and then you realize you're in it, and it's just like, holy crap. It was very masterful, in a way. Again, as a horror sound is very predictable. I think, like, it's easy. Like, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But the sound designer really, I don't know who they got to do this. I should look them up. But the sound designer really did a really fantastic job at just highlighting and stressing you out. Like, you would just be stressed for no reason. And I think it also speaks to the stress of the character and some of the anxieties and things that were going on too. But somehow the sound designer was like more stressed out. I don't know how to describe it. Just watch it. You'll understand what I'm talking about. I love that love and chasing beauty and chasing youth and chasing validation is already like a mental drug. So I love that Coralie made it a physical drug. And one of the things that goes unnoticed to me is it wasn't like a pill. It was something that you literally inject into your veins. Most times when people think of injecting a drug that can become addictive, we think of like heroin and things of that nature. If it was in pill form, I think that the audience would have just kind of likened it to like Tylenol or ibuprofen. Even if they would have thought Vicodin or Percocet, I don't think it would have had the same punch as actually putting the band around your arm and injecting something into your veins. Anytime any liquid drug substance is put inside of you, the effects are faster than pill form anyway. So I like that it's like in your face at how addictive this can be and how addicting it is to want to conform to society's expectations of who you are. So the theme of it all, inside of all of the body horror and stuff like that, is very, very loud and very clear. And I think that celebrities should watch this. And I think that the average viewer should watch it, especially the mean ones, because this is you. Like, you're the substance. That's crazy. So, the VFX team. Okay. The metamorphosis and the mirror scene in it. Okay. Virtual effects, editing, like, I cannot even describe. I was rewinding it over and over because I'm like, this is too seamless. And shout out to the actresses who are playing older Elizabeth and younger Elizabeth to be able to do the same movements and mirror the transformation in a way that it truly felt like the same person. It was almost like even though they're played by two different actresses, it was like, it was some of the smoothest, coolest VFX editing I have ever seen. Like, it's almost as if this younger Elizabeth, aka Sue, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, I don't know. I have no words. Y'all did that. I have no words for what happened. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It was insane. I could not believe my eyes, like, literally. Let's see. I think that was the last of my notes on here. So one of the things with the VFX, and just not only with that, but just the whole plot of the movie, is that the POV between the one character and the next was very seamless, and to really physically have this battle between wanting to be young again and wanting to be the sole object of affection versus what your mature self knows is like, okay, well, I'm getting older, so I should probably relax and just enjoy the life that I have. That battle and making it like a physical battle definitely reminded me of Fight Club in a way, where this other thing is a physical manifestation of your deepest, darkest insecurities, and you're just trying to hold on by a thread to your own sanity. And it's just this tug of war, and it's this literal fight that's between you and you. And I love that a lot. Moving on to the final film in this is Conclave, which is drama suspense, and it's 2 hours long. When Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. So I looked up conclave because I didn't know what it meant. And it's the meeting of the cardinals for the election of the new pope. So the name of the movie and the definition is very on the nose. And I thought that was very clever. It's very in your face, especially for, I'm not Catholic, so I wouldn't know what that is. And I would have no reason to use this word in any other area of my life. So when I read like what it meant, I'm just like, I don't know, the dork in me was just kind of like, oh, it's literally like the name of the movie is the thing, the definition. And I thought that was really cute. I thought it was really cute. I thought it was really cool. One of my favorite actors leads it, Ralph Fiennes. I think I'm saying it wrong. Fiennes? Lord Voldemort. Y'all know who he is. The color grading and picture quality is really good. What I really liked about this movie is that it was mostly wide and mid shots, and the way that they would angle it, a lot of times it would be like over the shoulder or like a little bit low diagonally, or you're behind like a staircase or something. As a viewer, I really felt like I was eavesdropping into the conclave. Like I felt like the fly on the wall, or like the little house mouse. Like I should not have been there. And so I think that's where the suspense portion comes in, because as I was receiving this movie, I really was just kind of like, oh my God, like what's tea? What? Oh my God, like what secret are they holding? And it made me want to run and like tell somebody outside of these walls. So in this whole movie, you are barricaded with them. There's no phones, there's no connections, no nothing to the outside world. Different priests from all over the world, like we already said, come in from all over the place, and they're voting and they're doing all these other things. And so we're going through, and while we're going through the voting, your next pope has to be without scandal. And so we're going through these things where we're kind of looking and making sure that there's no dirt on anybody, while also trying to figure out like what actually happened to the Pope. And so going back to the camera work, it's like the way that the camera was set up, it almost made you feel like you were playing a game of Clue. And it's like, okay, they all seem nice and they all seem kind and they all seem noble, but you are kind of like peering in with your little beady eyes, and it's just like, something in the milk ain't clean. And it made you distrust everybody the entire time. So I do like what they did with the camera work with that. Another thing is, it was a lot of like push and pull with the camera work, and I don't really know what this is called. I'm not a cinematographer, but just a lot of like pulling you in and then pushing you back, pulling you in and pushing you back. So it goes back to that eavesdropping of it all, where you're like getting super close to the secret, but then somebody turns around and you gotta hide so that you don't get caught. Like that's what it felt like the camera was doing to me the entire time. And I don't know that I felt that way about a movie before. It was a very interesting feeling that I got watching this movie, especially with a religious film. And for this to be a religious film, it also didn't feel very in your face religious. Maybe because we got to meet a lot of the popes and the different backgrounds and stuff that they came from, so you got to see that it wasn't just Catholicism based in, I don't know, white Europeans or Italians or Latinos, but you got to see a lot of people who were Catholics outside of the phenotype that would be in your mind when you think of a Catholic person. So while it's based on like Catholicism setting, the whole of its parts was about just picking the best person, like the best human being. And so you get to really see a lot of these characters as humans and not like what you're normally used to feeling when you watch movies like Doubt, right? That was another like Roman Catholic thing, but it was very much rooted in the stereotypes of Catholicism. And so I like that this was like the absence of that. And so even if you're not a religious person, you're able to sit in the film and really absorb it because it wasn't like in your face, and it didn't focus on just the negative stereotypes of what the religion can sometimes carry. Overall, I would say like it didn't feel, I don't know, I just felt like I was in lockdown with them. The shots were nice. There were some dark scenes. I would say like the lighting was really good in some of the darker scenes. The use of reds and blues, I think those are like the primary colors that most people kind of start with and just kind of play with cinematography and with the editing. And it just made everything so secretive. So whatever they did, whatever y'all did at Conclave editing team, it just made everything feel just more hush hush instead of bright. So even in some of the areas where we're voting for people, it was still like a little bit of gray, a little bit of blue, almost historic in a way, even though we're still set in the current times, because it's to give you that feel of like a sense of like doom almost. And you were definitely waiting for the other shoe to drop the entire time. And when the shoe did drop, it was just like, wow, did not see this coming. And I think that's what a movie is supposed to accomplish, I guess. So good job on them. Wow, so we made it through, and this is really long, but it's cool though. First and foremost, I will say all of my ratings are of my own, okay? These are my opinions. While I am in the film industry in some way, shape, or form, I am but an actor, I am but a writer. I do feel like I have a director's eye when it comes to vision, but I am not an expert on sound design, editing, color grading, cinematography, stuff like that. I know what I see, and I can speak to what I see based on my own expertise, but like most people, I am not like the all-knowing person in it, and there's always something to learn. So this is just like, it's like when you practice medicine, because things change and things update. For me, whenever I watch movies and whenever I watch TV, especially reviewing at this scale, it's like a practicing thing for me. I get to learn as I watch. I get to research and look up things that I didn't really know. Y'all already know in some of my descriptions I wasn't really able to describe necessarily what I was seeing on a technical standpoint, but I know what I am looking at, and I feel like I know enough about what I'm talking about to have some fidelity. With that being said, don't get upset if a movie that you watched that I listed, or that an actor that is your fave that I listed doesn't get like a super high ranking. That's your prerogative. At the end of the day, I did not vote in the Golden Globes, so I have no personal say in who's going to win. So with that being said, let's go over my ratings, and then we're gonna go over why we rated these things as such, and then we're gonna close this out. So, Emilia Perez, overall, I gave this movie an 8.5 out of 10. So the music gave it the 0.5 and the 8. For me, I felt like the ending, like the full ending of this film, we could have done without it, and it could have been inferred in the car scene. I feel this way because I felt like it was redundant to have 2 funerals in a way. I don't know. I just feel like I don't want to say what the thing is because I do want y'all to watch it. So the car scene and the final acts in the car scene, with everything that was going on and everything that happened before then, I felt like we could have ended it there, because I think the character of Emilia Perez would have been at peace regardless. From that scene, I think we could have just gone and did like the you know, when they put the script at the end and they talk about how this thing led to such and such and such and such. So we could have ended a lot of the acting scenes there, and then at the end, like before the final credits, put, you know, this is how many people were found and taken back to their families, this many people in the drug cartel were arrested, so on and so forth. Actually having the scenes and Rita coming back to the kids and all of those things, it just felt like, well, duh, that's gonna happen. And the audience can safely assume that that would happen. So I felt like it was unnecessary, if that makes any sense. Still a great film. I would watch it again. But I just felt like it would have had more of an impact if it would have just ended with the final act. Anora. Okay. I gave this film a 6.5 out of 10. Now hear me out. I really enjoyed Anora. First off, all these films, except I didn't see The Brutalist yet, I would rewatch every single one of these movies. Every single one, hands down. These ratings are based on the criteria that I mentioned before. Let me mention them again, in case you forgot. Story, technical excellence, cast and crew cohesion, representation, and inclusion. So I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10. The feeling gave me that it was a short film that went on too long, and the ending kind of came out of nowhere in contrast to everything that we saw the entire movie. So if we would have cut some of the scenes in the beginning and then maybe added more of Anora's internal thoughts, internal dialogue, her own self-esteem and what she thought about herself, then I think the ending would have made a lot more sense to connect with how this movie ended versus everything that we saw. We saw someone confident, someone willing to stand up to like Russian powerhouses, and then at the end it was someone very broken, but where she broke down and the space in which she did it kind of came out of nowhere. And I think it would have made more sense if we would have saw a glimpse of this before she met the son of the oligarch. Overall though, I like the movie, but just in reference to like best motion picture, I give it a 6.5. A Real Pain, I gave an 8.5 out of 10. Yes, there is a tie in this. I'm literally like, I gave them ratings based on the criteria, not necessarily rating them against each other, if that makes sense. Because I didn't want to put one above the other in an unbiased way. At the end of this, obviously I'll give who I would want to win, but I just gave them ratings based on the criteria, not against the movie that I had seen before it. So I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. One of the reasons I gave it an 8.5 out of 10 is because I think it could have been longer. That's crazy. I am not one to ask for longer movies. Like, I'm constantly saying, give us 90-minute movies. But I feel like it could have been longer. Some of the lighting, like in some of the hotel scenes, I think could have been a little bit better. Again, when we're shooting like dark scenes, there are ways that you could still light up characters or certain features, or kind of like spotlight them in a way that still allows the viewer to see them and see the emotions and stuff being displayed. And I felt like we could have gone a little bit better there. The red lighting was amazing. The final shot was absolutely incredible. I actually cried at the final shot of this movie. But the reason I say it could have been longer is because I think overall this is an excellent film. I would have liked maybe like a montage or some flashbacks of their relationship prior to seeing each other for the first time, or after they saw each other for the first time after this time apart, during scenes where they weren't necessarily speaking or there was some turmoil in one of the characters. Maybe go back to that space in which they were like brothers, so that the audience can root for them to connect in that way again while on this trip. I think it would have been a really good job at bringing us in even more, at being like, please reconcile, please figure this out, please, like, this is your first cousin, like your first cousins are your best friend. And so I think just even a scene or two of that would have given this movie like 9.5 or even a 10. Like, I'm not even kidding. The Substance, I gave a 9.5 out of 10. I'm gonna be real. The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10, and it's because I think one of the final scenes, right before like the last shot, I think we could have laid off a little bit on the gore and the body horror of what was happening on that stage. Now, I loved it. But in the realm of the category, and the fact that multiple other people are watching this film and voting on it and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, we would have gotten it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she already looks a certain way. We already get it. But they definitely leaned in a lot in that scene. And I'm like, okay, if I had to think about it, we could have backed off a little bit. But all that to say, this is a near perfect film for me. Like I said in the beginning, the fact that a horror film is even considered in Best Motion Picture, it absolutely deserves a seat at the table in its nomination. It is a phenomenal film. The theme and the plot is relevant. The theme and the plot is timeless. And I thought it was a great use to kind of take social media and spin it on its head in an internal way at how we view ourselves and how we self-actualize our deepest, darkest insecurities in the unhealthiest of ways. I just feel like you can't get no better than that. Like, I don't know, like, you can't get any better than that. I also think for The Substance, before I move on to Conclave, that first opening shot in that last shot and the camera being overhead. Oh my goodness. Like, this is a film where from beginning to end, you know, the director had a vision and they executed it. The director had a vision. The cinematographer took the vision, made their notes. The editor took their notes and then made their notes. And then when they all did the final cut, they were all there together, and you could just tell when they walked away from the final cut, there had to have been like tears of joy. There had to have been like, you know, European kisses on the cheek, mwah, mwah, like perfection. Perfection in the way all of this was done. Like, it's insane. Conclave. All right. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Here's why. I felt like we could have integrated timeline titles for each passing day in the Conclave, and because I think that would have helped. But then, like, contrasting to that, right? So I also gave it a 7.5 out of 10 because I also didn't know if I was supposed to be in the Conclave or if I was supposed to be a spectator of the Conclave. So while it was like eavesdropping and stuff like that, just me as a viewer, I wasn't aware of how many days it had been. So nothing crazy, nothing fancy, but just like, I don't know, church bells. Doom, day 1. We're going through some things. Doom, day 16. Who knows? I don't know how long this normally takes. And so we didn't have that, which would be fine if visually I knew where I was in the story as a viewer. And this mainly goes with the way things were shot. I think if there were more mid to close-ups in a lot of these scenes with a few wide shots of what was going on, I would say I, me, the viewer, was meant to be locked in the Conclave with the characters. But because most of the shots were mid and wides, and a lot of times I'm watching from like a distance, I felt like a spectator. So it would have been nice to know how long it had been. I just didn't know where I was supposed to be as a viewer, and it confused me. So that's why I gave it a 7.5, because I wasn't sure what the director wanted us to do. And I think that speaks to the direction of everything, not necessarily the rest of the team. Whatever decisions were made during the editing, I don't know how many shots they got of which scene or whatever, but just the final product to me just made me feel like I didn't know where I was when watching the movie. Okay, so who would I want to win? I absolutely would love for The Substance to win. I'm trying to think if there was ever Best Motion Picture, at least at the Golden Globes, that was a horror movie that won. And I already said that there's genre bias. So I don't know. I just think take the gore and the body horror and stuff out of it. From start to finish, it is a near perfect film. Like, hands down, The Substance, it's like everybody knew what their role was. Everybody knew what the direction was, and everybody just executed. And it just seems like when it comes to like the cast and crew cohesion, everybody was together, everybody did their parts, and it just came together. If The Substance does not win, I would love for it to either be A Real Pain or Emilia, Perez. I just think those three movies in general, the themes and the plots are so, I don't know, they're like really, you have like the overarching theme, and then they do a really good job at the subplot really like hitting you in the face. So like with the substance, it's just like, oh, this drug to alter your appearance. But the subplot is beauty standards and what they do to someone's psyche and how far they go to change their bodies. I mean, we live in a world where, you know, this quote unquote cat lady exists, where she's had so many body modifications that she's unrecognizable anymore. Like, she looks like a cat. In A Real Pain, okay, we're going to Poland and we're going on a Holocaust tour so that we could visit the place that our grandmother was there. But the subplot is the relationship between these two cousins and how grief can either bring together someone or tear them apart, while also dealing with depression and self-deprecation in both characters, right? And then with Emilia Perez, it's all of the violence and the cartels in Mexico and all these other things. But the subplot is this man was living a life that he felt was not true to himself, and the only way he could be true to himself is to fake his death and then live as a woman. And so it's the layers of these films I think are so good, and while they are deep, they are simple enough for you to receive and to really view all of the overarching themes and the subplots at the same time and still be able to walk away and enjoy the movie. So those are the 3 movies that I would love to see walk away with Best Screenplay Motion Picture for the Golden Globes. I think so far all of these movies have won a lot of different awards at, I don't want to say smaller awards ceremonies, but just on smaller stages. You know, we know the Golden Globes is streamed in like on national television, probably internationally at this point. But just all of them have won awards. All of them are so worthy of their nominations. Once again, congratulations to everybody for all of your nominations and for all the hard work that you put into these films, and for all the things that you're continuing to teach us through your films and the lessons and the fun. And I cannot wait to see who wins. Make sure you tune in to the Golden Globes on January 5th. Do not miss out, and Happy New Year.